welcome. It's me, Percita, and this is Percita's Paradox. So today we're going to wrap up our toxic relationship series with 4 ways to detox the relationship. I think it's a beautiful way to end with not just stating the problem, but actually trying to come up with some solutions. And what we're going to talk about in that regard is going to be based on more of the intimate relationship, not necessarily the person that you don't interact with on a regular or that you have an intimate relationship with, being your boss or a colleague or something of the sort. Because for the most part, you can get up and leave and go home for those types of relationships. But when you're talking about the intimacy in the intimate relationship or interaction, it's a little bit more difficult. Those relationships are relationships between your parents, your grandparents, your relatives, your aunts, your uncles, your spouses, your boyfriends, your girlfriends, right? So let's start by identifying the first thing that we can do. Number 1, we can take a break. Take a break. And taking a break doesn't always mean it has to be where you can never come back to it. It basically means you need to figure out what's going on. You really need to stop and figure out what is actually happening in the relationship. Are you able to see what you need to see? Have you been ignoring it? Are you in a position where you just don't really know how to express yourself without really, making some type of an extreme type measure? I mean, when most people here take a break, they instantaneously go, okay, well, I guess we're breaking up. In marriages, it's like, well, we're divorcing. Obviously, if you don't understand, you don't really get a break because we're married. Well, if you don't want to break it to you, you actually still need a break. You don't necessarily have to physically be in a position where you move out of your home and rearrange your finances and things of that nature. But you do know you can actually slow down and take a break and just simply stop. Stop with all of the badgering, the belittling, any of the negative conversation, and really just trying to function in a manner where you can figure out what's going on. Especially if you're talking about your parents, just take a break. Just really push yourself in a position that you slow your thoughts and really look at what you're seeing and not what you want it to be or not what you think it is, but actually what it is, okay? What it is. It is so difficult for us to not try to make an excuse in our moments of taking a break or even trying to feel as if it's okay to take a break. It's absolutely okay to take a break because taking a break does not mean it's over. It simply means just that, taking a small pause in your life, in your thoughts, in that relationship or interaction to figure out where exactly you are. In order to be healed, you have to figure out where you are so that you can figure out where you're going. And so many times we forget that. If we were GPS, you cannot just put in the system where you're going. The first thing it's going to ask you is, where are you? In order for you to get the proper directions to where you're going. So taking a break is number 1. Number 2, taking an emotional distance from the situation. And an emotional distance is a completely different dynamic than taking a break. It really is just taking the time to understand where your emotions are and what your expectations have been and how you're actually functioning within that. Are you not able to really express yourself because you become so emotional either through tears or assumptions or things of that nature that you don't understand? You want to actually slow down your emotions, not take things quite so personal, and figure out what is and what isn't. It is very complicated to find that balance when you're either on the battered end where you feel as if everything you do or you've been told everything you do is just going to be wrong and it's a terrible situation. Then you have a hard time really trying to figure out how to be almost selfish in that because you really want to slow down your emotions and not make so many decisions in toxic relationships based on the fact that you don't want to feel guilt or you don't want to make the person upset. That is super prevalent when we're talking about parents because so many times we're trying to be respectful, and in being respectful, we lose ourselves in what's true and what isn't true because we want to simply be respectful. But a lot of that, especially older children with their parents, you literally want to communicate with them as an adult, but you find yourself bumping into the generation that says if you're not respectful and you don't understand that you need to respect your elders, then we can't even talk. And usually that persists to, then you don't really have the opportunity to have an opinion because they feel as if I'm older, I'm smarter, I know better, listen to me, this is what it is. Very complicated in that because your emotions get tied up where you feel as if you're just not worthy and they're not going to listen to you anyway. Super duper difficult. Parents, grandparents, aunts, anyone who's older than you, it is very complicated. When we're talking about relationships, again, you have the situation where if you're dealing with a toxic person, they're going to throw at you continuously any type of emotional break or distance between them is going to perpetuate you to lose them. So there's these threats that kind of come about. And in the midst of those threats, you really want to be conscious that that's the toxicity that you're trying to rid yourself of. People who use toxic traits in their relationships threaten a lot. And they're always concerned about you having what's called an independent thought, right? So even in marriage, we hear it all the time. Well, we're one. Guess what? You're not one. You're actually two people who came together to create two whole beings. You're not halves. So no one should come into a relationship as a half to create a one. You're two things that are on top of each other. So if you can imagine a circle and then you put another circle on top of that circle, they both were circles to start. So you want to have an independent thought and you want to allow your independence in your relationships. You have to be able to understand it is okay to not always agree and to not be in a position where someone challenges the ability for you to think for yourself. And that happens so much in relationships, especially toxic relationships, because someone is always threatened, or even both can be threatened about you not being in agreement. Being in agreement doesn't mean that you agree on everything. Being in agreement is a consciousness of understanding that you're coming together for the betterment of the two of you, not just one. Right? So that emotional distance that I am proposing to you is key in order to detox this, because you have to figure out how much of this person or persons or situation has actually gotten into you for you to have lost yourself. So that independence is beyond key. It is key. Number 3, you have to stop and figure out how much of that do you contribute. How much of that are you actually perpetuating? Are you the toxic person or are you the secondary in the relationship? Because let's just say everyone's going to have some sense of toxicity, which is what we talked about before. But there's a lead when it comes to toxic relationships. There's a giver and there's a receiver. Which one are you? Some people say, well, Percita, sometimes everybody's toxic and, I only say this to him because he says it to me. I hate to be the one to break it to you, but if you're the person that's holding that conversation and that's your defense, then you're probably the toxic person, because the person who is receiving most of the blunt of whatever the force of toxicity is doesn't talk about it a lot. They don't really feel as strong as the person who is pushing all the toxicity. And I say that because if you think about it, you're losing yourself in the process. You're not able to actually push into a manner of independence. So whoever is the most boisterous is usually the person who feels like they're right. It's kind of funny, but if you think about it, the person who is being, we're going to use the word abused or mistreated, they're not really walking around telling people that they're being mistreated. And then there's that moment that they do. And that's usually when a person is desperate to get out. And they start just really telling other people how they feel. Now, I'm going to be real with you. I have still seen, with all of that happening and a person wanting to get out of the relationship, the toxic person still comes back. Total manipulation, total conversation of, I'm going to change, only to know that you weren't strong enough to leave in the first place. So when you can ask yourself, how much of that are you allowing? If the person is telling you that you're a bad person and you're not trustworthy or you don't love them or things like that, you have to find out, are you really doing those things, or is this person using your will to want to make them happy against you? So when you can figure out what your contribution is in the relationship, it's an easier task to figure out how either to move through it, assist the person in getting some professional help, or completely abandoning the relationship altogether. Now, again, it's more complicated when we're talking about parents. When you're talking about that, sometimes you just have to own the fact that it's not going to be an emotionally intimate relationship. That's what I mean. Where you're not going to have the softies and, the I can tell my parents anything kind of a thing because of judgment, or just the simple fact that they're not able in that capacity. And not everyone is. So that's not a bad thing, as long as you understand that their emotions and their stance in that should not dictate you. And you don't allow it to dictate you, because when you can actually figure out your contribution, you figure out how much of that is actually them and how much of them are you allowing into you in order for you to try to make logic of that. If you don't like it, then you will know you don't like it if you understand your contribution, and you'll do something about it. If you don't, then there's no way for you to really defend yourself, nor can you look that in the face, whatever that is, be it the lie, be it the demon, be it the curse, and really tell it, not me, it stops here, moving on. Okay? The last thing, number 4, seek professional help. If you know me, you know that I absolutely love spiritual. And I will read my Bible, and I will read books, and I will do all kinds of cool things that I can think of that will actually keep my spirit in alignment to what I call a godly way. Now, that doesn't make me perfect. It doesn't mean that I don't do things that the world, quote unquote, would do. Usually, in my world, I would tell someone, seek the person who can be a middle person, who can actually speak between the two of you. If you're married, seeking professional help is definitely something you want to do. If your parents are willing to go to counseling with you, then there is absolutely nothing wrong with doing that. But if you're not married and you're not in that situation, seeking independent counseling, independent therapy should be something that you look into. There is no one above help. No one. Everyone should be in a position, if they're willing to change, or if they're willing to identify and make some changes, then they would know that they don't know what they're doing and they need to seek some type of direction. That therapy, that counseling is something that you want to seek. You have to find someone that you can put your trust in. You have to find someone that you feel comfortable with, and you have to find someone that you can actually build and open up with, so that they can give you direction. Now, of course, going to therapy is not enough if you're not applying it. You still want to actually come back into your scenario and apply it. Because for me, the goal is not for you necessarily to have to walk away unless you have to walk away. Because typically people that are in toxic relationships have intertwined themselves to a degree that it's almost complicated to get out of. But if the relationship can change, and I mean that from the heart of what I'm saying, meaning if the person is willing to go as deep as to change characteristics about them that they have perpetuated for years, go for it. I will say and clarify again, typically the person is not. And typically the counseling that I'm telling you about in this detox is to assist you in walking away, period. But in some cases, there is the moment where someone is willing to change from a spiritual place, from a professional place, just from a soul place. They're willing to shift and change. So I'm never going to tell you that people can't change. I'm just going to tell you that it's a complicated process and most don't. So if you find a person and they're willing to change, and not just by their words, because words are cheap, but their actions. I'm a strong believer, and you'll know a person wants to change by the fruits that they bear, not the words that they speak. But are they actually different? Are they looking different? Are they moving different? Are they changing? What's happening? You want to look at that. So in review, the 4 things are what? Taking a break, emotional distance, checking your contribution, and professional help. That can assist you to starting the process of your detox. As always, I come to you thanking you so much for joining me on this Thursday to recap and to try to come to some solution on toxic relationships. I mean, we could go on and on and on about it, but I really want the focus to be what can we do to not only state our problems, but also fix them. So that's why this detox video is so important. That's why I really want you to ponder it and really check on those 4 things that I gave you as some sense of a guideline for you to start your journey to wellness. Because that's the paradox. The paradox is that you have to learn to really shift and move in everything that you're doing. It has been a complete pleasure to talk to you in regards to the Toxic Relationship series. I hope you enjoy this detox version of it. And of course, we're moving forward. Toxic relationships are complicated, and they're definitely something that people talk about, and we use the word often. Toxicity is something that happens in every single part of your life. But when you start allowing it too deep into your relationships, you not only lose yourself, but you lose your purpose, because your goals become something that they don't need to, because you'll find yourself trying to please people. And if you have not figured it out yet, let me be the first to tell you there's no way to please people whatsoever. No matter how pretty you are, no matter how great the sex life is, no matter how much money you have, pleasing people will never happen, because typically people are not pleased with themselves. So if you're seeking that, then I really want you to go back and look at the videos, start from the beginning, look at them until you understand them, and then get to this video and listen to it again on how we can assist you to get out and make better judgment. Okay? Thank you so much, as always, for joining me. Remember to do the 3 things. The 3 things. Live life authentic. Live life authentic. You cannot stop doing that. To focus on those 3 things really puts you in a beautiful place in life. So remember, as always, I can't be me without you coming on the channel and sharing your time and comments and love and sharing the video and subscribing and telling your friends to do it. Amazing. As always, I thank you. I thank you. I thank you. So until next time, I will see you soon. Have a wonderful day and do those 3 things. I had to say it. Bye-bye.